"You're not allowed to date anyone else," she said. Then she slid into the seat next to me at the bar. Just like that. A complete stranger, with eyes the color of a stormy sea and a look of sheer, unadulterated desperation. She put a hand on my arm, her fingers surprisingly cold. The bar was loud, music thumping through the floorboards, but her voice cut right through it, low and steady. "Not for the next 3 months anyway," she amended, as if that made it any less insane. I just stared at her. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I didn't say anything at all. And that, as it turns out, is how I met my wife. Let me back up. My name is Leo. I'm 32 years old, and I'm the superintendent of a mid-rise apartment building in a part of the city people usually pass through on their way to somewhere better. It's not a glamorous job. It's a life lived in the background. I'm the guy you call when your sink is clogged, your heat is out, or a light bulb flickers in the hallway. I fix things. That's what I do. It's a quiet life. A life in the basement, mostly. My apartment is down there, next to the boiler room. The pipes are my constant companions, humming and groaning like old men telling stories. I liked it that way. The quiet, the solitude. For the last 4 years, I had been emotionally switched off. A walking ghost in a work shirt. I went to work. I fixed what was broken. I came home. I ate dinner alone. I watched television without really seeing it. I went to sleep. I woke up. I did it all again. I wasn't unhappy. Not really. Unhappiness requires feeling something, and I had systematically, carefully, dismantled my ability to feel much of anything at all. It was safer. You see, I had stopped wanting things. Wanting was the source of the pain. I wanted my dad not to get sick. But he did. He was a mechanic. A man with grease-stained hands and a heart bigger than any engine he ever tuned. He taught me everything I know about fixing things. Not just cars, but anything. He had this saying. "Some people break things just to show they're strong, Leo," he'd tell me, wiping his hands on a red rag. "Real strength is in the fixing. Especially the things no one else thinks are worth saving." I wanted him to stay. He didn't. The cancer took him slowly, then all at once. I was 25. After he was gone, I tried to want again. I met a woman named Sarah. She was bright and loud and full of a life I thought could jumpstart my own. For a while, it worked. I wanted a future with her. I wanted a house, a dog, the whole stupid, beautiful dream. Then one day, she sat me down and told me I was too quiet, too steady. She said my calmness felt like indifference, that I was like a house with all the lights off. She needed more. She needed a bonfire, and I was, at best, a pilot light. She wasn't wrong. When she left, she took the last of my desire to want with her. The silence she complained about became my sanctuary. I retreated into it. I took the superintendent job, moved into the basement, and pulled the door shut on the world. I became an expert at fixing leaky faucets and faulty wiring, but I left my own broken parts scattered on the floor. I figured they weren't worth saving. I was the kind of man who doesn't get a family, the kind who doesn't get the girl. I was the background character, the guy who ensures the main characters have running water and functioning heat. I had accepted my role. So when this woman, this beautiful, frantic stranger, sat down and laid claim to my dating life, I didn't react the way a normal person would. I didn't laugh or get angry or call for the bartender. I just listened, because in her eyes, I saw something I recognized. A deep, structural fracture. A soul that was holding itself together with sheer force of will. And my first thought, the very first one to flicker in the dusty, abandoned workshop of my heart, was an old, familiar instinct. I can fix that. Her name was Clara. She took a shaky breath, her hand still on my arm, as if anchoring herself to the planet. "I know this sounds crazy," she started, her voice a little less demanding now, a little more fragile. "Believe me, I know. But I am in an impossible situation. I waited. I'm a good waiter. It's part of the job. You wait for pipes to drain, for glue to set, for paint to dry. My younger sister, Amy, is getting married in 3 months," she explained, the words tumbling out in a rush. It's this huge, perfect wedding she's been planning since she was 6. The whole thing. The dress, the venue, the 1,000-layer cake. It's everything to her. I nodded slowly, taking a sip of my beer. The problem, she continued, her knuckles white as she gripped her own glass, is the best man. Of course, there was always a man involved. His name is Julian, and he's my ex. Ah, we broke up 6 months ago. It was bad, she said, and a shadow passed over her face. He's one of those guys, incredibly charming to everyone else, a monster behind closed doors. He can't stand that I ended it. He thinks I humiliated him. I knew the type, the charming bully. The world is full of them. They smile in the light and sharpen their knives in the dark. He's been telling people I'm unstable, she whispered, the word tasting like poison in her mouth. That I was obsessive, that I'm a mess. He's been laying the groundwork for months. And now he's threatening to make a scene at the wedding. To tell his side of the story during the best man's speech. He'll do it. I know he will. He'll ruin Amy's day just to punish me. That was the self-sacrificial element. It wasn't about her. It was about her sister. She was willing to do something certifiably insane to protect someone else's happiness. She was standing in front of a tidal wave, trying to hold it back with her bare hands. So, she said, finally looking me right in the eye, I need a boyfriend. A fake boyfriend. Why me? I asked. My voice was rusty from disuse. She glanced around the dimly lit bar, at the loud guys doing shots, at the preppy men in crisp shirts trying to look important, at the hipsters trying to look unimpressed. Then she looked back at me. Because you look calm, she said, as if the word surprised her. You look like you wouldn't break. You're just sitting here, by yourself, not trying to impress anyone, not looking at your phone. You just are. She saw my quietness not as a flaw, but as a feature. She saw the house with the lights off and thought it looked peaceful. I need someone steady, she pleaded. Someone so obviously normal and decent that Julian's stories about me being a hysterical mess will just fall apart. I need a human shield. For 3 months. We go to a few pre-wedding events, we go to the wedding, we smile for pictures, and then we disappear from each other's lives. I can pay you. I don't want your money, I said, the words coming out before I'd even thought them. Then what do you want? It was a dangerous question, one I hadn't let myself consider in years. What did I want? I wanted the humming in my basement apartment to stop feeling so lonely. I wanted to fix something that wasn't a pipe or a wire. I wanted to see if my dad was right, if there was strength in saving something someone else had written off. Clara was being written off. By her ex. By a world that would believe the charming man over the difficult woman every single time. The world saw her as the problem, as unstable, as the villain in her own story. I saw someone trying to protect her family. Okay, I said. Just one word. Clara stared at me, her mouth slightly open. I don't think she expected it to be that easy. Okay? She repeated. Okay, I confirmed. I'll do it. I'll be your fake boyfriend. A wave of relief so profound washed over her face that she seemed to deflate in her seat. The tension went out of her shoulders. She looked, for the first time since she sat down, like a person instead of a clenched fist. Thank you, she breathed. You have no idea. Oh, I think I did. And so the agreement was made. In a noisy bar on a Tuesday night, I, Leo the ghost, agreed to pretend to be in love. We spent the next hour in that bar, beginning our strange and sudden invention. We need a story, she said, pulling a pen and a napkin from her purse. She was all business now. How did we meet? Here, I suggested. No. Too cliché. Julian will pick it apart. It needs to be something solid. We spent 10 minutes brainstorming. A coffee shop? A bookstore? A dog park? I don't have a dog, I pointed out. We could say you were walking your friend's dog, she countered. I don't have any friends with dogs. She sighed. Okay, this is harder than I thought. What about my building? I offered. You could have been visiting a friend who lives there. We met in the lobby. Your friend's key was stuck in the lock. I had to come fix it. It was simple. It was plausible. It was rooted in my actual life. Clara's eyes lit up. Oh, that's good. That's really good. It's mundane. It's believable. She started scribbling on the napkin. Met in lobby of 4B. Tenant. Melissa Chun. Lock was jammed. There is no Melissa Chun in 4B, I said. There is now, she replied with a wry smile. We kept going. How long had we been dating? For months, we decided. Long enough to be serious, short enough that it was believable no one had met me yet. What was our first date? A little Italian place downtown. What do I do for a living? I'm a building superintendent, I told her. She paused, pen hovering over the napkin. Is that okay? It's what I am. No, I mean, Julian is a finance guy. All his friends are lawyers and consultants. They're snobs. Then let them be snobs, I said, a little more forcefully than I intended. It's the truth. It's easy to remember. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. A superintendent. Leo the superintendent. I like it. Somewhere in the inventing, the strangest thing happened. We stopped inventing and started actually talking. She asked me about my job. Not in a condescending way, but with genuine curiosity. She wanted to know what the weirdest thing I'd ever had to fix was. A toilet clogged with an entire cooked chicken, courtesy of the tenants in 7C. She asked about the humming pipes and if I ever got lonely in the basement. Sometimes, I admitted. It was the most honest I'd been with anyone in 4 years. I learned about her. She was a graphic designer. She worked from home, which was why she had the flexibility for this insane scheme. She loved old movies and hated cilantro. She had her father's eyes and her mother's stubborn streak. She spoke about her sister, Amy, with a fierce, protective love that was both beautiful and terrifying. For 2 hours, we weren't a desperate woman and a ghost. We were just a man and a woman talking in a bar. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't want to go home to my quiet basement. I wanted to stay here, in the noise, listening to her voice. The first test came a week later. Pre-wedding brunch. You ready for this? She asked, her voice tight with anxiety as we stood outside the trendy, sun-drenched restaurant. I'm just the guy who fixes things, remember? I said. This is just a different kind of broken. She gave me a small, grateful smile and took my hand. Her hand was warm this time. We walked in. The place was buzzing with the kind of polished, wealthy energy that always made me feel like I was wearing the wrong clothes no matter what I had on. Clara's sister, Amy, a bubbly, radiant version of Clara, rushed over and enveloped her in a hug. You made it, and you must be Leo, she said, turning to me with a wide, open smile. I've heard so much about you. It's nice to finally meet you, I said, my voice steady. And then I saw him, Julian. He was exactly as Clara had described. Tall, handsome, with a smile that could sell sand in the desert. He oozed a confident charm that set my teeth on edge. He was standing with a group of men who all had the same haircut and expensive watches. He saw us, and his smile tightened just a fraction. He made his way over, weaving through the crowd like a shark. Clara, he said, his voice smooth as silk. You look… Well, it was a compliment that sounded like an accusation. Julian, she replied, her voice cool. You know my boyfriend, Leo. Julian extended a hand to me. His grip was firm, a classic power move. Leo, good to meet you, man. I've heard nothing about you, he laughed. A sharp, barking sound. The dig was clear. I tend to keep to myself, I said, meeting his gaze. I didn't try to match his grip. I just held his hand and then let it go. So, what do you do, Leo? He asked, already looking past me, as if searching for someone more interesting to talk to. I'm a building superintendent, I said calmly. Julian blinked. Then a slow, condescending smile spread across his face. A super? Really? Wow. Clara, you always did have a thing for the salt of the earth. The insult was designed to needle her, to portray her choice in me as a step down, as proof of her poor judgment. I could feel Clara tense beside me. Before she could say anything, I spoke. It's good work, I said simply. People need a place to live. I make sure it's a good 1 inch. My lack of reaction seemed to throw him. He was expecting me to get defensive, to puff out my chest. I didn't. I just stood there, a quiet, unmovable object. Right? Well, he said, clapping me on the shoulder a little too hard. Don't let us keep you from the canapes. He walked away, rejoining his pack. Clara let out a breath she'd been holding. Thank you, she whispered. I was about to lose it. He wanted you to, I said. He's trying to break you. Don't let him. She looked up at me, and in her stormy eyes, I saw a flicker of something new. Not just gratitude. Something more. The brunch was an endless parade of small talk and veiled questions. We stuck to our story. We were a team. I kept my hand on the small of her back. She laughed at a joke I told. We looked, for all the world, like a couple. It was surprisingly easy. A week after that, I had my moment of seeing. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was something small, something no one else would have noticed. We were meeting for coffee to strategize for the next event, a couple's shower. We were at a little independent cafe near her apartment. We found a small table, but it was wobbly. Annoyingly so. Every time one of us moved, the coffee sloshed in our cups. This is driving me crazy, Clara said, frowning at the table. I was about to get up and find some napkins to shove under the leg, the superintendent and me taking over. But before I could move, Clara had knelt down. She pulled a small sugar packet from the dispenser, tore a tiny piece off the corner, folded it neatly into a small, dense square, and wedged it firmly under the short leg. She sat back up and placed her hands on the table. It was solid as a rock. She didn't say anything. She just took a sip of her coffee, a tiny, satisfied smile on her face. She fixed it, quietly, efficiently, without making a fuss. In that tiny, insignificant moment, I saw her, really saw her. She wasn't just a damsel in distress. She was a fixer just like me. She saw something broken and she made it right, not for applause but just because it needed to be done. The world saw her as unstable, but I saw her as the person who quietly, calmly, fixed the wobbly table everyone else was just complaining about. My dad's words echoed in my head. Real strength is in the fixing, especially the things no one else thinks are worth saving. Maybe she wasn't the one who was broken. Maybe the world's perception of her was. And I knew, sitting there in that cafe, that this wasn't about a 3-month contract anymore. This wasn't about protecting her sister's wedding. It was about protecting her. The wedding day arrived like a slow-motion storm front. The ceremony was beautiful. Amy was glowing. Clara, the maid of honor, stood by her sister's side, looking breathtaking in a deep blue dress. She looked composed, elegant, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the subtle tightness around her eyes. She was waiting for the other shoe to drop. So was I. The reception was held in a grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, towering floral arrangements, an open bar. It was the kind of place I'd only ever seen in movies. I felt like an imposter in my rented tuxedo. Clara found me during the cocktail hour. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "I feel like I'm going to vibrate out of my skin," she admitted, her voice low. "He hasn't said a word to me all day. He's just smiling. It's worse than the threats." I took her hand. "We're almost through it. Just a few more hours." She squeezed my fingers. "Thank you for being here, Leo. Really. There's nowhere else I'd rather be," I said. And it was the absolute truth. Then came the speeches. The father of the bride. The maid of honor. Clara's speech was beautiful, funny, heartfelt, full of love for her sister. She didn't stumble once. She was perfect. Then the master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. "And now, For a toast from our best man, Julian. A knot formed in my stomach. This was it. The high-stakes event. Julian sauntered up to the podium, a glass of champagne in his hand. He looked relaxed, charming. He started with the usual jokes about the groom, stories from their college days. The room was laughing. He was winning them over. I watched Clara. Her face was a pale, stoic mask. "But I also want to talk about love," Julian said, his tone shifting. "It's a tricky thing. Sometimes what looks like love from the outside is really something else. Something a little more volatile." My blood ran cold. He was starting. "You see," he continued, his eyes scanning the crowd and landing, for just a second, on Clara. "Some people have a hard time with happiness. They thrive on drama. They break things just to see what will happen. They'll break your heart, and then tell the world that you were the one who was crazy." It was masterful in its cruelty. Vague enough to be deniable, but every single person who knew they had dated knew exactly who he was talking about. I saw a few people glance uncertainly toward Clara. The narrative crack was beginning. His false story was starting to set in the minds of the guests. Clara's composure was fracturing. Her chin trembled slightly. She was trying so hard to hold it together, to not give him the reaction he craved. She was being publicly, quietly executed, and she was supposed to just sit there and bleed. I had to do something. My first instinct was to stand up, to call him out, to cause a scene. But that's what he wanted. A confrontation would just prove his point that anyone associated with Clara was dramatic and unstable. Breaking things to show you're strong. My dad's voice again. No, that wasn't the way. Real strength is in the fixing. So, I did the quietest thing I could think of. While Julian was still talking, still basking in the spotlight and twisting his knife, I stood up from my table. I walked across the polished dance floor, right past the podium where he stood. I didn't look at him. I didn't acknowledge him at all. I walked straight to Clara. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with confusion and hurt. I held out my hand. "Dance with me," I said, my voice just for her. "Leo, what are you doing?" "I know," I said softly. "Dance with me." She hesitated for a second, then placed her hand in mine. I led her to the center of the empty dance floor. Julian's voice faltered. He trailed off mid-sentence, watching us. The entire room was watching us. I turned to the band leader, who was looking just as confused as everyone else. "Do you know La Vie en Rose?" I asked. He nodded. "Play it," I said. "Please." He tapped his music stand, and a moment later, the soft, beautiful notes of the melody filled the room. I pulled Clara close. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arms around her. And we danced. We were the only two people on the floor. Julian was still at the podium, microphone in hand, but no one was listening to him anymore. All eyes were on us, on the quiet man in the rented tuxedo and the beautiful, misunderstood woman in the blue dress. We weren't a spectacle. We were a portrait of quiet intimacy, of gentle defiance. I hadn't broken Julian. I hadn't confronted him. I had simply made him irrelevant. I had fixed the moment. I had taken the spotlight he was using as a weapon and turned it into a soft, warm glow around her. I chose to dance with the one no one else would. She looked up at me, her stormy eyes shimmering with unshed tears. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of being seen. "How did you know?" she whispered. "Know what?" "That's my favorite song." I smiled. Just a lucky guess. It wasn't a guess. I'd heard her humming it once, a few weeks ago, when she thought I wasn't listening. After our dance, the spell was broken. The DJ took over, the dance floor filled up, and Julian slunk away from the podium, his speech unfinished, his power gone. The public perception had shifted. He wasn't the charming victim anymore. He was the bitter ex who got upstaged. Clara wasn't the unstable mess. She was the woman who was so loved that her boyfriend would stop a wedding to dance with her. The rest of the night was a blur of music and laughter. For the first time, Clara looked genuinely happy. The weight was gone. We drove home in a comfortable silence. When I pulled up in front of her apartment building, I turned off the engine. The pretense was over. The contract was fulfilled. "Well," she said, her voice soft, "we did it." "You did it," I corrected her. "You were incredible. I couldn't have done it without you, Leo." She turned to me. "So I guess this is it. Back to our separate lives." The thought of going back to my basement apartment, to the humming pipes and the solitude, felt like a prison sentence. The house with the lights off didn't feel peaceful anymore. It just felt empty. "I don't want to go back to the basement," I said, the words raw and honest. She looked at me, her expression unreadable in the dim light of the car. "Clara?" I said, my heart pounding in my chest, a feeling I thought I'd forgotten. "This isn't pretend for me anymore. I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was when you fixed that wobbly table. Maybe it was tonight on the dance floor. Maybe it was the second you sat down next to me at that bar. But it's real. For me." I had laid all my broken pieces on the table. It was terrifying. She was quiet for a long time. I could hear the faint ticking of the engine as it cooled. Then, she reached out and touched my cheek. "It's real for me too," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. I was so focused on the fake part, I didn't let myself see the us part. "When you walked out onto that dance floor tonight, no one has ever stood up for me like that. Not by shouting, but